The rain was falling in delicate threads, soaking the concrete and turning the streets of Riverside into a blur of puddles and passing shadows. In front of Building 11B, a little girl in a faded yellow raincoat knelt beside a man slumped against a graffiti-stained wall. Her lunchbox lay open in her lap. "You look hungry," she whispered, her voice trembling with kindness, not fear. The man didn't speak. Just stared, mud-caked, hollow-eyed, as if the world had long stopped speaking to him. She placed half of her sandwich in his hand, gently, as though he were made of glass. He blinked. Slowly. A storm surged behind his eyes. Later that night, Olivia Thompson opened the door of her apartment to a man in a dark suit and polished shoes. "Ma'am," he said, his voice calm but urgent, "Mr. Reynolds would like to speak with you about what your daughter did this morning." She froze. Her heart stuttered. The only Mr. Reynolds she knew was the name on a skyscraper downtown. The envelope came without a return address. Slid under the door sometime between Olivia's second coffee and the fourth snooze of her 6 a.m. alarm. She almost missed it, her eyes bleary and her hands full, one clutching her stethoscope, the other adjusting Sophia's too-short jacket. But there it was, creamy and thick, with her name written in ink that looked pressed, not penned. Olivia Thompson. She opened it slowly, expecting a bill. Instead, a card, a single embossed sentence on heavy stock paper. "You changed something in me. E.R." Folded inside was a check. The amount made her knees buckle. $150,000. But it wasn't just the money. It was the message. The initials. E.R. Edward Reynolds. She had heard the name whispered across hospital wings, attached to charities, headlines, luxury towers, and at least 3 international tech empires. A man so reclusive he hadn't given a public statement in years. Her hand trembled. Sophia looked up at her, eyes wide, chocolate stained from her half-eaten granola bar. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Olivia didn't know what to say. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that the richest man in the city just left a message like a ghost? That her small act of kindness, sharing a sandwich with a stranger in a rainstorm, might have cracked open a door no one expected? That very morning, before the envelope arrived, Olivia had stood by the stove staring at a single cracked egg. The last one. Rent was due. Her second job had cut hours. She'd sent in 5 nursing resumes this week, no replies. Still, she'd managed to toast the bread, wrap Sophia's sandwich in wax paper, and tuck a sticky note inside. "You are the best part of me, Mom." And then, just 2 hours later, this. The knock came at noon. Gentle, but deliberate. Not the kind of knock that asks permission. The kind that assumes it. A tall man in a tailored charcoal suit stood at the threshold, holding a leather briefcase and an umbrella still glistening from the rain. "Miss Thompson." Olivia nodded, shielding Sophia instinctively. "I'm James Harrington, attorney to Mr. Edward Reynolds. May I have a moment of your time?" He said it with such poise, as if stepping into their fraying apartment was routine. As if he didn't notice the worn carpet or the cracked paint curling by the heater. But he did. His eyes took in everything, cataloging it with quiet precision. Sophia clung to her mother's hip, whispering, "He's not like the others, Mommy. He's quiet." James kneeled to her level. "I met a very kind man this morning who told me someone gave him the best sandwich of his life. Was that you?" Sophia nodded, unsure. He looked sad. "I wanted to make him smile." James stood and smiled, not politely, but sincerely. "You did." That smile changed everything. He handed Olivia a folder. Inside, notarized confirmation of the deposit, a business card, and a handwritten note on the same stationery as the envelope. This one was longer. "She reminded me of someone I failed to protect. I'm not trying to repay a debt, I'm trying to believe again." If you're willing, I'd like to speak in person. No press. No cameras. Just a conversation. No signature. Just again, ER. Olivia sat on the couch, hands trembling. Sophia looked between them. Is the sad man okay, Mommy? That was the question no one could answer. Because the truth was, the sad man wasn't who he appeared to be. That morning, just a few blocks from the Thompsons' apartment, a man in ragged clothes sat on a bench outside Rivera Elementary, invisible to the world. His beard was overgrown, his coat torn and soaked through. Parents pulled their children closer when they passed. No one spoke to him. No one even looked twice. Until Sophia. She had walked out of the school gate alone, scanning the street. Olivia had texted, running late again, wait for me by the bench. She obeyed. And then, saw him. She didn't see a stranger. She saw someone cold. Hungry. Alone. And so, with the quiet certainty only children possess, she sat beside him. They didn't speak for minutes. Just sat. Her lunchbox was still warm. And then, she opened it. You can have half, she said, offering the sandwich like a gift. But you have to take a bite now or it'll get soggy. He stared at her, eyes flickering like old film. Why? Because my mom says sharing makes your heart grow. Maybe yours needs growing. And in that moment, he broke. Edward Reynolds had designed his life to avoid moments like these. After the accident. After the funeral. After burying a daughter he hadn't seen in weeks, too buried in boardrooms and deadlines. He'd built walls. Fortresses. Nowhere in his carefully controlled world was there space for a child with crayon hearts drawn on her backpack and a peanut butter sandwich cut in stars. But here she was. And her face, God, her face, looked like Ava. Not exactly. But enough. Enough to unravel him. He took the sandwich. And when she smiled, he couldn't look away. 2 hours later, he sat alone in the back of a black SUV, rain drumming against the roof, the sandwich wrapper still in his pocket, untouched. He turned to James and whispered, "Find her." James didn't ask why. He never did. He just nodded. And now, here he was, in the home of the woman who didn't even know she'd stepped into the orbit of a man who could change her entire life. Back in the apartment, Olivia spoke slowly. We don't want handouts. If this is some kind of experiment or test. James cut in gently. It isn't charity. It's connection. Something Mr. Reynolds lost long ago. And perhaps, something he's desperate to rediscover. Olivia looked at Sophia. At the drawings on the wall. At the second job schedule pinned beside the fridge. At the little pink backpack with the broken zipper. How does he want to meet? She asked finally. James smiled. He's waiting outside. It had started like any other gray morning in Riverside. The kind that wrapped around you like damp wool, soft, heavy, and unwelcome. Olivia's shift had ended just 30 minutes earlier, and her nurse's scrub still carried the faint scent of antiseptic and exhaustion. She clutched Sophia's hand tightly as they weaved through the cracked sidewalks, past the flickering neon of the corner bodega, past the broken fence that sang in the wind like a rusty violin. Sophia didn't seem to mind the chill. Her cheeks were pink, her braids swinging, and her voice filled the air with a non-stop melody of questions, about birds, about stars, about why some clouds looked sadder than others. Olivia answered what she could, smiled when she couldn't, and tried not to let the weight of unpaid bills and skipped meals show in her eyes. The bench in front of Rivera Elementary had long since lost its paint. Most mornings, it was occupied by someone asleep or staring into nothing. Today, it was a man in layers of tattered clothing, hunched and still, a wool cap pulled low over his eyes. His hands, large, calloused, and trembling slightly, clutched a paper cup that held nothing but rain. Olivia tensed instinctively. She glanced at her daughter. "Let's wait over here, baby." But Sophia didn't move. Her small hand slipped from Olivia's. And then, as if drawn by something invisible, she walked toward him. "Sophia," Olivia called softly, but the girl kept walking. Step by tiny step, until she was standing in front of him. The man didn't look up. Not right away. But he felt her presence. And when he did lift his face, Olivia's breath caught. Not because he looked dangerous, but because he didn't look like he belonged there at all. There was something too alert in his eyes. Something watchful. Calculating. A sadness too deep to be accidental. Olivia's instincts as a nurse flared. This wasn't just another man down on his luck. There was purpose behind the grime. Deliberate layers of neglect, like a costume worn too long. Sophia knelt beside the bench and opened her lunchbox. Olivia had packed it an hour earlier with leftovers, a cookie, and half a sandwich. Sophia always ate half. The other half, she liked to save for a friend, she said. Some imaginary classmate, Olivia assumed. But today, that friend had a face. A real one. "You look cold," Sophia said, unwrapping the sandwich. "It's peanut butter and honey. My mom says honey makes your tummy happy." He stared at her, unmoving. The silence stretched. And then, his voice, rough and low, "You shouldn't talk to strangers." Sophia shrugged. "You don't feel like a stranger. You feel like someone who lost something." That made him blink. Olivia took a step forward, unsure whether to intervene or trust the strange calm that settled over the sidewalk. She studied the man more closely now. Behind the ragged scarf, there was structure. His cheekbones, the sharpness of his jaw, the way he held his body even while slouched, it all betrayed a past life that didn't involve back alleys and soup kitchens. And then, for the first time, he smiled. It wasn't wide. Barely a curl at the edge of his lips. But it was real. Cracked open by a child who'd offered him a piece of her world. He reached out slowly, as if afraid the sandwich might vanish if he moved too fast. His fingers brushed hers. Not by accident. Olivia held her breath. "Thank you," he said. Sophia beamed. "You're welcome. Do you want the cookie, too?" "It's oatmeal. That's the healthy kind." He chuckled, a low rasp like gravel under wheels. "No, you keep that. You'll need the energy." Sophia tilted her head. "You talk like a movie character." He looked away, suddenly uncomfortable. Maybe I've just seen too many movies. Then came the question that cracked him. "What's your name?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes shifted, calculating. And then he murmured, "Eddie." Not Edward. Not Mr. Reynolds. Just Eddie. The name he hadn't heard in years. The name only two people had ever called him, his late wife, and his daughter. Sophia grinned. "I'm Sophia. And this is my mommy. She's a nurse. She helps people even when she's super tired." Eddie looked up at Olivia now. Their eyes met. And for a moment, something passed between them. Not recognition, but resonance. Two people who had carried pain too long without setting it down. Hers, from a life of scraping by. His, from a life of having everything, except presence. "Thank you for letting her talk to me," he said quietly. "Most wouldn't." Olivia hesitated, then nodded. "She sees things others don't." He didn't respond. But the look in his eyes said everything. He didn't deserve this moment. And he knew it. After a few minutes, a sleek black sedan rolled up to the curb. Olivia turned, expecting it to keep going. It didn't. It stopped. She looked back, but Eddie was gone. She blinked, confused. There was no way he could have disappeared so fast. The sandwich wrapper lay on the bench. The paper cup was gone. And in its place, something glinted. A coin. Old, gold-rimmed, and impossibly out of place. Sophia picked it up, curious. "Mommy, look. It has a lion on it." Olivia took it gently, her nurse's instinct again buzzing. This wasn't just a trinket. It had weight. History. Meaning. She looked up again. The sedan was still there. And someone inside, watching them. Sophia waved. The tinted window moved slightly, but didn't lower. A moment later, the car pulled away. They stood in silence. "Do you think Eddie was magic?" Sophia whispered. Olivia didn't know how to answer. All she knew was that a man who shouldn't have been there had vanished, leaving behind a feeling she couldn't shake. And a coin that didn't belong in their world. Not yet. The coin didn't leave Olivia's purse for days. She had meant to take it to a pawn shop, just to see if it was real, or rare, but something stopped her. It wasn't about money. It was about a feeling. That same lingering unease in her chest every time she walked Sophia to school and glanced at the old bench, now always empty. Eddie had vanished. Just like that. As if he'd never existed. But he had. She felt it. Then came the knock. 3 sharp, professional taps at 6:17 a.m. on a Saturday. Olivia opened the door in a worn robe, expecting a neighbor, maybe the super. Instead, a man in a tailored gray coat stood perfectly still, hands clasped in front of him like he belonged in a courtroom, or a funeral. "Miss Thompson," he asked gently. "I'm James Harrington. May I have a moment?" Olivia stiffened. "Is this about the hospital?" "I've paid what I can. I just need." He raised a palm. "This is not a collections matter. I represent a client who has asked me to deliver something. And, to extend an invitation." She blinked. "A client?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. Thick. Cream-colored. Heavy. The kind you see in movies, held by heirs with trembling hands. She took it carefully, almost reverently. Inside, 2 things. First, a check. Olivia gasped. The zeros blurred. It was enough to cover rent for 5 years. Maybe more. Second, a note, handwritten in firm, slanted cursive. "This is not charity. It's gratitude. Your daughter reminded me of something I thought I'd lost forever. If you'll allow it, I'd like to see her again. Discreetly. No obligations. Just a conversation. E." The E seared into her mind. Edward. Not Eddie. She knew it now. Edward Reynolds. The reclusive billionaire whose wife and daughter had died 5 years ago. The man who disappeared from public life, who never gave interviews, who was whispered about in boardrooms and business magazines as a ghost haunting his own empire. And he had sat on a bench in Riverside, eating a sandwich from a 7-year-old girl. Olivia felt her knees go weak. Is this a mistake? James Harrington shook his head. No, ma'am. Mr. Reynolds would never confuse sincerity for accident. Later that afternoon, they met in a private library. Not a skyscraper. Not a mansion. A hidden retreat nestled behind a row of bookstores downtown, tucked between shadows. The room smelled like cedar and old paper. Olivia kept glancing at the velvet curtains and the soft flicker of gas lamps, as if she'd stepped into another time. Then he walked in. Clean-shaven. Dressed in black. But it wasn't the suit that changed him, it was the posture. Gone was the slump of a man forgotten. He moved like a monarch in mourning. Hello, Olivia. She rose instinctively. Mr. Reynolds. He stopped her with a gentle smile. Please. Edward is fine. I believe Sophia would prefer Eddie. She didn't know what to say. So she sat. And he sat across from her, hands folded, eyes calm but searching. "I owe you more than I can say," he began. "Not for the sandwich. Not even for the kindness. But for the reminder." She swallowed hard. "Reminder of what?" He paused. "That innocence still exists. That not everything in this world is a transaction." A silence stretched. "My daughter, Lily," he said, voice growing thinner. "She died at 6. Acute myeloid leukemia. I was in Singapore when she slipped into a coma. By the time I landed, she was gone." Olivia's hand reached for her own heart. "She used to draw me pictures," he continued, "of lions and stars and little sandwiches with smiley faces on them. I kept none of them. I thought I'd have time to ask for more. I didn't." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. And then Sophia. Her eyes, her laughter, even the crinkle in her nose when she hands someone something precious. He blinked. It was like hearing my daughter say goodbye again. But gently, this time. Olivia finally found her voice. "Why the disguise? Why Riverside?" Edward leaned back, a shadow creeping into his features. "After Lily passed, I stepped away from everything. Business. Friends. Reality. I wanted to understand what I had ignored. So I put on rags and walked the places I never would have dared before. I wanted to feel invisible. Because that's how I had made her feel." His voice cracked. "I didn't expect to be seen." A lump formed in Olivia's throat. "Sophia doesn't know any of this." He nodded. "She mustn't. Not yet. I don't want her to think I'm buying her affection. Or worse, replacing something." That word hit hard. Replacing. It hung between them like fog. Then he said something that sent a chill down her spine. "I've done this before." Her breath caught. "Excuse me." Edward's eyes shifted downward. "I tried to connect with another little girl. 2 years ago. In Denver. She reminded me of Lily, too. I paid for her school, anonymously. But when I showed up in person, it scared her family. They thought I was unstable." Olivia sat very still. "And were you?" He didn't flinch. "Yes. I was. Then. And now. I don't know. But I'm trying to be better." The room felt colder. And Olivia felt something dangerous curl around her spine, not fear, exactly, but the slow realization that this wasn't just about gratitude. It was about grief. Sophia had unknowingly opened a locked door inside this man. And once opened, some doors never closed. "I need to think about this," Olivia whispered. Edward stood. "Of course. But please, don't punish her for my mistakes." He reached into his pocket and handed her a second envelope. "This isn't a check. It's a letter. For Sophia. Not now. But one day. When she's ready." He bowed slightly, as if ending a symphony. Then walked away. Olivia sat alone in that room of velvet and silence. Her hands trembled. Because something told her. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Sophia stood by the kitchen window, the afternoon sun brushing golden streaks across her hair as she whispered, "Mom, do you think Eddie's okay?" Olivia's hand paused mid-stir in the soup pot. The question came like a pebble dropped into still water, small, but rippling deep. She had hoped the distance, the silence, would gently fade Edward from Sophia's memory. But children remember differently. They don't recall headlines or warnings, they remember warmth. And sandwiches shared with strangers who smile through sadness. "I think he's trying to be," Olivia said quietly. Sophia turned, her eyes wide. Can I write him a letter? Olivia hesitated. She had read the envelope Edward left a dozen times, still sealed, still heavy in her hands. It wasn't time yet. Not for that letter. But maybe it was time for something else. 3 days later, James Harrington returned, no knock needed this time. Olivia waited on the steps of the apartment with Sophia in her Sunday dress and a tiny backpack that carried nothing but crayons and the note she had written in shaky, hopeful letters. Dear Eddie, thank you for being my friend. I hope you have sandwiches and warm socks. Love, Sophia. James smiled gently when he read it. He'll want to see her. But not in a mansion. Not in a room full of shadows. Instead, he brought them to a garden. Tucked behind a rehab center Edward had privately funded years ago, the garden was quiet, rows of lavender, white roses, and a single bench facing a shallow pond. On that bench sat Edward, not in disguise, not as a CEO or a ghost, but simply a man in a navy sweater, weathered and unsure. When Sophia ran toward him, he didn't move. He just waited, eyes blinking fast, lips parted slightly. Then she sat beside him like she'd never left. Do you still have crumbs in your beard? She asked playfully. He laughed, a real sound, rough like it had forgotten how. Only the invisible kind. They talked about ducks. About the flowers. About how sandwiches shouldn't have pickles because pickles ruin everything. Olivia sat at a distance, watching. Not interfering. Not protecting. Just witnessing. Edward didn't try to hold her. Didn't make promises. He only listened. And then Sophia did what children do best. She asked the simplest, most devastating question. Do you miss your little girl? His throat tightened. Every day. Did she draw you pictures? He nodded. Sophia unzipped her backpack. Do you want one of mine? He took it with hands that shook. A crayon sun. A smiling sandwich. And 2 stick figures holding hands. One labeled me. The other, Eddie. That night, Olivia tucked Sophia in and stared at the ceiling long after the lights dimmed. She couldn't stop thinking about the other little girl. Lily. And the man who had once failed her. Could a child be a mirror and a cure at the same time? Days passed. Edward never pressured. But his presence became more regular, a walk to school, a short chat over cocoa. He never stayed long. He never entered their home. Until the letter. It arrived in Sophia's backpack, tucked between her spelling homework. Olivia opened it with trembling fingers. Ms. Thompson, I would like to establish a trust fund in Sophia's name. Not for today. Not to control. But to ensure that no act of kindness goes unrewarded. Should anything happen to me, she will never want. I have also included a letter for her, unopened, untouched, to be read when she turns 18. Lastly, I would like your permission to take both of you, actually, to Lily's grave. Not for spectacle. Not for closure. Just, as a bridge. From what was lost to what remains. Tears filled her eyes. Sophia didn't know what a trust fund was. But she knew what it meant to visit a grave. She asked Olivia if she should bring flowers. No, Olivia whispered. Bring your picture. The cemetery was quiet under a gray sky. No press. No cameras. Just wind, stone, and memory. Lily Reynolds lay beneath a willow tree, her name etched beside a verse. She danced between the hours and left behind light. Edward knelt. Not as a billionaire. Not as a man grieving. But as a father, forgiven. Sophia placed her picture by the stone. Then reached out and held Edward's hand. I'm not her, she said softly. I know, he whispered. But I can be her friend. He nodded. And I'll be yours. Later, in the car, Olivia turned to him. Why us? Out of everyone in this city, why us? Edward looked at her with quiet eyes. Because your daughter gave something no one else did. Not money. Not attention. She gave me a second chance without even knowing what I'd done with the first. That night, Sophia drew a new picture. This time, 3 stick figures. Labeled Mom, Me, and Eddie. And above them, a sun. But it had 2 faces now. One laughing. One crying. When Olivia asked what it meant, Sophia replied, "That's how love feels when you remember something sad, but it still makes you warm inside." The picture went on the fridge. Beside overdue bills. Crayon hearts. And hope. And in a mansion far from Riverside, Edward Reynolds finally unlocked the drawer he hadn't opened in years. Inside, Lily's drawings. He placed Sophia's beside them. Not as a replacement, but as a reminder that healing doesn't erase the past. It turns the pain into something we dare to carry forward. And in that quiet courage, a new family began.